Flyers, Danny Briere. What were your thoughts on that pick at number 7?
I think Matvei Michkov is a grand slam upper deck home run for Danny Briere and the Philadelphia Flyers. I think watching him play and getting a real sense of the player and his impact is incredibly impressive. I think he's one of those picks that you're going to have 4 to 5 other teams really rue the missed opportunity in 5 years' time. And I think what I like most about the pick is that for what the Flyers are embarking on with this rebuild and the grand vision that Danny Briere has to get the Flyers back into being a contender, is Matvei Michkov is almost idiot proof. Like the Flyers have had some hits and misses in the draft, but then there's also been questions about it's great to pick a player, but then you have to develop him and get him to the NHL. And the fact that you're going to basically have to have hands off for the next few years and have him come over when he's ready in 2026, when his contract is up, that's a real plus. And then on top of that, that's when you get to begin the entry-level contract and the significant cap savings that you get for an impact guy that steps right into your lineup. So the timeline lines up. I think the player is an unbelievable find. This guy is going to be a star. He's going to be the next Kirill Kaprizov, the next Nikita Kucherov, whoever it might be. He's that good. He had all of the talent to be, in any normal year, he'd be the number 1 overall pick, and teams would have said, hey, I'm willing to go with whatever the risk is in order to get this player. Here's the funny thing. I don't think there's any risk. He wants to play in the NHL. There's no question. And now finally the Flyers got an opportunity to meet with him twice in the last week that really kind of put their minds at ease.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, you mentioned no risk. That was going to be my next question. Any concerns around it? Do you see the ability to potentially buy him out of that contract? Is that even a possibility?
So I checked in with the league on that possibility on Thursday, and the answer to that is it possible? Yes. In fact, I wrote a story a number of years back about Kucherov and his journey over, and him also being a little bit of a later pick, much later than 7, even though the talent was there, because teams were afraid of his contract and because teams were unsure about the player. I think you've taken that situation, and because of the socio-political world that we're living in now, it's ratcheted up a bit because it's Russia. And so can they buy him out? Yes. And would the NHL then allow him to sign a contract to play for the Flyers? The answer is yes, but the league would need to see some proof that the contract was satisfied, because the league isn't in any position to be allowing players that are still actively under contract with other leagues to come over and play in the NHL. So I personally, going back to the timeline, why would you? Unless he's asking you to and dying to get out of there, which I don't have any sense that's the case. Allow him to be comfortable, be at home, and grow at his own pace while the Flyers are just kind of still tearing this thing down to the studs.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Yeah, I mean, he's obviously playing with men on the larger ice surface, and I mean, the developmental piece is happening organically for him. But yeah, why rush it, really? I mean, now is not necessarily the time that you need him. So
you'd be burning the first couple of years of his contract kind of for no reason. The Flyers aren't really even trying to be good yet.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point.
Would you say, Frank, out of the draft, or maybe even the first round, was that the biggest surprise, or did it not really surprise you?
No, I think Leo Carlsson going number 2 to Anaheim surprised me, because the Ducks bypassed in Adam Fantilli. I think he's a ready-made star. Not to say Carlsson can't be. Carlsson might be the more complete player. Like the Ducks guys were telling me that they think he can be a Selke winner at center and be the next sort of Patrice Bergeron type player. And what an unbelievable guy to find. But in Fantilli, I look at the historic numbers that he put up at Michigan, and I see that he's got a little bit of bite and edge to his game, not afraid to mix it up. He's got a little bit of size. Like that's the guy that I'd love to get my hands on down the middle for building your team. So I guess, look, everyone wants to grade draft classes right after, which I think is the funniest thing about media. It's like, we can do that in 5 years. Don't ask me before then, because we'll know what Leo Carlsson is then, and we'll know what Adam Fantilli is and Matvei Michkov. But from a surprise perspective for the Flyers, I got a sense late last week that he was someone that they were really seriously considering. And in fact, I mentioned Monday to start off the week that he was one player that they had targeted and talked to other teams about the potential of moving up. I know they called San Jose and Montreal and asked the question, what would it take for us to get to number 4 or 5 overall? Because they had him in mind. Obviously, you're not telling the team which player you're going to pick. But then the Flyers started doing their calculus of, well, if we just do nothing, is there a chance that this guy could land in our lap? And the board broke perfectly. The Canadians were also considering potentially sliding back from number 5. They had their eyes on David Reinbacher, and they got their defenseman.
Oh, easy for you to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Poor Carey Price. That's what I was saying.
Oh,
poor guy, man. I felt
that was
so
a
bad.
tough moment. I was a little backstory. I had traded messages with Kent Hughes on the draft floor, and I said, I was asking, hey, are you keeping the pick or are you trading it? And he sent a message back that said, sorry, I was practicing my French. And I said, maybe you should have had Carey Price practice as well.
Yeah, right. Oh, man, I felt terrible for him.
I had to throw that in there. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But I mean, hey, like, how'd that work out for Claude Giroux? Pretty good.
Yeah,
Pretty good.
exactly.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. I had to show Elvis. I told him that we were watching, and I said, Mr. Clark did that with Claude. He goes, show me. So, of course, I had to show him.
Yeah.
But, yeah, you're right. It did work out well for G.